You know that feeling when you're watching a satirical movie and you start to think, wait a second, this is hitting a little too close to home? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. A recent U.S. policy decision that is so wild, it feels like it was ripped straight from the script of Don't Look Up. So let's break down what happens when real life starts to look like satire.
This quote from Jacobin just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures what the movie was about, and as you'll see, what our real-world story is about, too. We're looking at a situation where all the experts see a massive threat on the horizon, but the response? Well, it gets all tangled up in politics, money, and just plain old public opinion.
So, what is our real-world comment? It's this urgent, widespread agreement among national security and tech experts. They're all pointing to the exact same thing, the huge strategic threat posed by the techno-economic race with China, and it all comes down to who controls the advanced AI chips that are going to power our future.
And what's the ultimate prize in this whole race? It's achieving something called Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI. According to tech leaders like OpenAI's Sam Altman, this is the endgame, creating systems that can basically do our jobs, totally revolutionizing not just the economy, but military power too. I mean, the stakes really could not be higher.
So a lot like the astronomers in the movie screaming about the comet, the experts here were pretty much all in agreement. For years, the U.S. policy view is solidifying around one core idea. Letting China get its hands on our most powerful semiconductors was a direct threat to national security. It could supercharge their military AI capabilities.
The first plan was, simple, logical. If these chips are the problem, you stop the problem. The policy was a full-on export ban. Just cut off the supply of these critical parts to China. It was basically the policy equivalent of saying, okay, let's just go deflect that comet. Simple. But then things got weird, Hollywood-level weird. Instead of just deflecting the comet, a totally new plan started to take shape. And it looked a whole lot like that bizarre plot twist from the movie. Why destroy this valuable threat when maybe you could make some money off of it?
So the policy did a complete 180. It went from a very firm no, that full export ban, to a kind of conditional, yeah, okay. U.S. companies could now sell their best chips to China, but there was a catch. And this wasn't just tweaking the rules, it was a total change in philosophy.
And that catch was a doozy. The deal said the chip makers, we're talking NVIDIA and AMD, would have to give the U.S. government 15% of their revenue from all the advanced chips they sold to China. Not their profit, their revenue. And for that price, they'd get the export licenses they desperately wanted.
This comment from a Reddit user pretty much sums up the gut reaction a lot of people had. The whole thing just didn't feel like a thoughtful national security plan. To a lot of folks, it looked a lot more like a protection racket.
Okay, so how on earth do you sell a deal this strange to the public? Well, it turns out, just like in Don't Look Up, you lean on some pretty classic ways people justify and deny things. And if you look at the psychology of science denial, it's like a playbook for understanding the arguments that started popping up.
All right, myth number one, and it's always the most powerful one. The idea that the economic cost of dealing with a threat is just too high to bear. In the movie, it was all about the trillions of dollars in minerals on the comet. In the real world, it was all about corporate revenue.
And that is the exact argument that came out of the financial world. This quote from an analyst on a Bloomberg podcast just captures it perfectly. The logic is, look, some access, even if you have to pay a tax and take on some risk, is way better for business than no access at all. The second classic move to delay action is to demand absolute 100% certainty. Remember in the movie when the president's chief of staff hears the chance of impact is only 99.78%? He's relieved. Oh, great, so it's not 100%. It's a way to sow just enough doubt to kick the can down the road.
And yep, we saw this exact same pattern play out in real life. To justify the deal, President Trump went on record calling NVIDIA's H20 chip obsolete. Now, that directly undermines the whole national security consensus that led to the ban in the first place. It's a way of questioning how certain and how severe the threat really is, all to justify a new plan.
So, not surprisingly, this totally bizarre policy shift immediately split everyone. Politicians, the public, you name it, into two camps. It created this huge firestorm of debate that looked exactly like the look up versus don't look up rallies from the movie. Here's the look-up argument, laid out perfectly by Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy. Critics, and they were from both parties, were just horrified. They argued that national security is, non-negotiable. It's not something you should trade for cash.
But here's the thing. How we feel about government action is always filtered through our political views. Just look at this. Trust in government among Republicans basically quadrupled. It went from just 10% in 2024 to 42% in 2025, right after the election. It just goes to show you, sometimes support for a policy is shaped more by who's in power than what the policy actually is.
And on the flip side, here's the don't look up argument, captured by another Reddit user. For people who supported the deal, it wasn't about the details. It was about decisive action. They contrasted it with what they saw as inaction from the previous administration. So it becomes less about the policy and more about which team you're on.
This polarization affects everything. The percentage of Republicans who saw the government as wasteful just plummeted from 92% down to 69% in a single year. It's wild. It shows just how fast perceptions can change based on who's in the White House, and it really reinforces that idea that who makes the decision can matter more than what the decision is.
So all of this brings us back to the huge question at the heart of this whole crazy episode. Is this some kind of creative, new wave trade policy, or is it exactly what the critics are saying, a dangerous shakedown that sets a really, really bad precedent?
When you dig in, the deal is just murky on so many levels. First off, it's completely unprecedented. Seriously, experts agree no U.S. company has ever paid for export licenses this way before. Ever. Second, critics immediately started raising constitutional red flags, arguing it's just an export tax in disguise, which is forbidden. And finally, maybe the wildest part, the administration admitted they hadn't even figured out what to do with the billions of dollars they'd be collecting.
And this right here is the long-term danger that has experts really worried. It could open the door to a pay-to-play model, where access to restricted tech and markets is just sold off to the highest bidder. It completely blurs that critical line between protecting the country and just, well, raising money.
You know, it brings to mind one of the key takeaways from the movie Don't Look Up. The satire feels so real because our own response to huge crises can be just as irrational. But there is one massive difference. In the movie, the clock runs out. For us, on these incredibly complex issues, it hasn't. At least, not yet.
And that really leaves us with this final kind of unsettling question. In a world where reality seems to be doing its best to imitate art, where a serious policy decision can so easily be mistaken for a dark comedy, how do we even tell the difference anymore? It makes you wonder what other comets we might be missing right now.